Welcome to the next Renaissance with Ramayan and Samir. We're in the midst of a massive transformation on the planet. We're witnessing market capitalism testing the limits of Earth's resources, the dangers of climate change, and the unraveling of political and social institutions that gave us stability. These all pose existential risks to our civilization that we cannot ignore. At the same time, we're witnessing a flourishing in consciousness, a revival of the arts as a vehicle for awakening, the emergence of technological breakthroughs that have the potential to transform our economy, and the dawning of new systems experiments. Are we in the midst of the next Renaissance?
Welcome everyone to a special short episode of the next Renaissance, and the theme is yoga. And it was beautiful to just sit before the episode and feel the stillness, and that yoga is really this moment arising and our unity with this moment arising. And the moment is all that we have. And the yoga practice that is emerging in the world today is the fastest growing body-mind practice on the planet. It's a decentralized movement largely driven by women, and it's part of the very important work of reconnecting ourselves back to the fundamentals of life. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time in looking at the next Renaissance from the perspective of body-mind practice. And one of the themes of Renaissances is the resurgence or renewal of ancient ways of being and ancient knowledge, but repurposing it in present times. And so I felt that it would be valuable for us to touch upon this subject of yoga, and we're going to do maybe a 10 to 15 minute episode on yoga. And joining me is my brother, Ramayan, and we have studied with the same guru for the last decade, who is a master of what's known as Ati Yoga, which is primordial yoga, and it's mostly a yoga of the mind, which is different from the most common perceptions of yoga as more of a physical practice. You won't find it in the Instagram yoga space, and the ancient practice of yoga was largely geared towards mastery of the mind. For most of the suffering that we experience in the life, from the yogic viewpoint, is originated in our minds. And so it's been wonderful to walk a yogic path with you together for a decade. And why don't we start with the discussion and exploration?
Mm-hmm. Maybe you can speak about yoga, Chit Vritti Nirodha.
Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That's the second sutra of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And it's defined as yoga as the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind field. And when the field of the mind is still, the next statement is Tada drashtuhu svarupe avastanam, which means the seer beholds its own nature. And simply thought of as a metaphor that when the water of the lake of the mind is stilled, then the reflection is seen clearly. And so the fundamental premise in yoga is that if you want to know who you really are, still your mind. And who you really are is a microcosm of the macrocosm. So what you will learn and discover of who you are is actually the inner workings and the secrets of the cosmos, of the whole universe. And so by this simple practice of stilling the mind, the universe surrenders itself.
Yeah. I feel like the whole of yoga can be almost encapsulated in that.
Yeah.
Because, I speak a lot about bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion. But you can also try to force that state. But if you try to force that state, but you go back to your regular life and your mind is busy and chaotic and confused, then you're not really moving in the direction of what it means to purify. So the statement is so beautiful and so powerful, and I feel encapsulates Ati Yoga. Because the heart blossoms, love blossoms when the mind is still. Have you not experienced this as well? That when your mind is still and you're in nature, love blossoms. Because love is the primordial state of existence. But you can say that, but you can only realize that when you're in touch with that primordial state of existence. And you can only really be in that when you're still, when you are empty. And you feel the wind and the prana, and you feel the beauty of the birds and the orchestration of nature and the beauty of the water and the life-giving nature of the sun, and the boundaries and small definitions of self dissolve, and you are one with that whole. And there is no whirlpools of mind whirlpools of desire, grasping tendencies, qualities. There's no sensory overload that's pulling you in all of these places outside of yourself. You are completely content, still, and open. And you're you're united, you're unified with that which we are. And that is the goal, if we can say yoga has a goal, which we can debate.
Well, I think that the beauty of the Indian spiritual culture is that it's basically a choose your own adventure, and you get to decide which path you get to take towards the goal that you seek. I would say that yoga, just simply on the definition of the word union, is you're seeking to unite the mind of the individual with the mind of the universe, the soul of the individual with the soul of the universe. There's a yearning to come to a place of wholeness or completion. What I wanted to turn the attention towards is more towards what is yoga today, and to what degree can the modern yoga movement actually facilitate the necessary up-leveling of consciousness that's required for us to bring about the more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. And I think that there's a lot of potential for this. And one of the ways that I think about the role of a yoga teacher in a yoga studio is kind of the role that a priest in a temple would play in the past. And I say this not because I think that yoga is religion. It's not a religion, but there used to be something that many people would consider part of their spiritual life, to go to a place where they would be able to connect to something deeper. And with the decline in attendance in religions around the world, especially from the younger generations, we're seeing more people seeking alternative means of spirituality. And what's happened in the modern yoga world is become more and more focused on displays of beauty and of flexibility, on physical prowess, when really that's not what the intention of yoga is. But when we look at what it has done, is it has established within the collective that there's a place that people are willing to go for 1 hour a week, maybe 2 hours or 3 hours a week, in order to reconnect with their body, to reconnect with their breath, to reconnect with their mind and their spirit. So they're coming to a place with the intention of receiving a body, mind, spirit practice, being led by someone with the, intention of connecting them back to themselves. And so this is actually a profound revolution. If our yoga studios and yoga teachers recognize the significance of this responsibility, wow, this could be remarkable. And so one of my main inspirations in yoga teaching and practice is to be that person, but also to support other individuals to recognize the import of the opportunity that we have in the yoga movement and being yoga teachers to make that kind of an impact for people.
So, just like the word tantra has been distorted, so has the word yoga. And most of the people in the world you talk to about yoga, they just think of the physical. And maybe they have, of course, some connection to breath and stillness and peacefulness and mindfulness. It's, not all that. Most yoga classes I go to try to incorporate some element of something, unless it's Bikram, or like some super acro yoga, whatever, very physical.
What about goat yoga?
Oh, I love the goat yoga.
Rage yoga.
Rage yoga.
Beer
yoga. Speaking to the distortion, right? Clearly there's...
Don't get high off your own supply. That's too old school.
There's weed yoga.
Yeah.
I've seen it a lot. 420 yoga, right? Yeah. Smoke weed, get high, and do yoga.
Well, that's kind of like the sadhus as well of ancient India. So a little bit.
Yeah. But speaking to this, I agree with what you said. And yet in ancient India, in order to be a yoga teacher, you were a realized master, or you had truly spent your life dedicated to the studies of the lineage. Patanjali, Bhagavad Gita, the understandings of the culture, the mantras, the way, the breath, the pranayams. You were, in order to call yourself a yoga teacher, which is in India called a guru.
I think a guru means teacher,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
I
so
call my
guru.
music teacher my guru.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
to be a guru, and you're
Yeah.
a music teacher, how much time did he spend becoming a music teacher?
A lot of time practicing.
No. Tell the public how much time.
Like probably thousands and thousands and thousands of hours.
How much time does he spend every day? What is his discipline and his regimen?
Yeah.
Right. So all I'm saying is
Yeah.
that exactly like that, to become a guru in India
Yeah.
and to hold that stature is an intensive process, whether it's music or whether it's, what we call today is yoga.
Yeah.
And I think part of the challenge we have today is these, you come to a single yoga certification program and you can come from any background, any culture.
Yeah,
and
now it's a race to the bottom. 2 weeks, you can become a yoga teacher.
And I feel like that is unethical. If you look at it from a cultural perspective of our lineage of India, it just feels like a dumbing down. Imagine if in 2 weeks you could become a Lakota sun dancer. Imagine the uproar that would happen in the entire community if all of a sudden you can start offering sun dance ceremonies after 2 weeks of training, make your own drum. It's insane to think that. Yoga is a 5,000-year cultivation of thousands of realized masters creating very, very distinct systems for the human being to awaken. To think that you can take 200 hours and lead somebody in that journey is laughable, actually.
Well, that's the intent, is that it's not about leading someone in that journey. It's about creating a space for someone to safely open their bodies. And even then, safely is a big word because there's a lot of injuries in the yoga space. Because
more than any other quote-unquote thing in the world, right?
I mean, I don't know if anything in the world, but I do know that there's injuries, that it does grow in the yoga community. Sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like it's important to note that, what's happening in the yoga world is not, connected to the root intention or like the root lineages or possibilities of what yoga is expressed. And so my curiosity as I lead yoga training programs is, how do I create spaces for teaching, learning communities that bring the practices of the ancient times into ways where people can find their way into how do I embody and explore this in a way that allows me to deepen my inner path, that to bend the outer life towards the inner. And I feel like this is the responsibility of the modern yogis, which is to go back to the roots, to understand what the core source teachings are, and then to bring those knowledge and practices, bring it into ourselves and say, how do I offer this to people in such a way that we create communities of practice? Mm-hmm. And these communities of practice are reflecting and sharing each other the ways in which we are modifying and growing them to bring about the kind of experiences that are indicative of deepening in our yogic practice or our spiritual practice. And I think this is important, that if we want to be this bridge, we have to really ask ourselves the deep questions of, is the yoga that we're sharing really deeply in service to people, and is it in service to yoga? Mm-hmm. Because my concern is that, a few years from now, a 17-year-old or 15-year-old girl going on Instagram will believe that yoga was invented by a white woman in Los Angeles. And
a few years from now? What do you mean 2 years from now? Here we are, bro. There's no few years from now.
Yeah.
We're a few years beyond that, right?
Right.
So, and I understand that everything has a natural evolution. I understand it had to come into the West through asana because that was the way that it could provide a gateway. I understand that on the larger level, there's all a perfect divine unfoldment, and that those coming into asana will find their own unfoldment into the deeper yoga if they're meant to. I get all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm surrendered to all of that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I feel there's a responsibility for a new type of upleveling.
Yeah.
And these yoga alliances and these groups and organizations, they themselves have created frameworks as an organization of what determines what is a yoga teacher and how many hours and this and that.
It's a disservice.
I think we need a new one.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a new type of yoga alliance.
Yes, exactly.
I think there needs to be a new type of bar and standard that's set amongst beings like yourself. And I'm sure there's many other beings I've met who hold that same desire and level and commitment as you to bring those teachings through and set a new standard. What does 10,000 hours look like rather than 200 hours look like?
Well, I say it a little sheepishly because I have a 200-hour yoga teacher training. So I haven't yet developed a 10,000-hour yoga teacher training, which is a pretty big ask,
Sure. But who do you want to teach?
I want to teach people who want to become white blood cells in the immune system of society. The
They'll definitely be white.
Huh?
So they'll definitely be white.
Why? Okay. I mean, take the color out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, I know some people might have an issue with that. Like, why do we use white blood cells? But that's just what they're called. But the idea is that you become an agent of healing by virtue of becoming more whole within yourself. So I think I want to call forth the people that are seeking to do the work within themselves and in the process organically be able to go out and share that with others. And I think that's the way yoga has been from the beginning. People come, they commit to a practice, they transform within themselves, and then the natural outcome is say, hey, this really works for me. This makes me feel really wonderful. And how do I offer this to others? And ideally, the people that I want to share this with are seekers that are seeking some kind of spirituality. And this is a modality for seekers to enter into, and it's a safe, when I say safe, what I mean is that it has a lot of tried and tested history behind it that can be taken and then applied in many contexts and explored and innovated upon. And I think that that's exciting. So I want people that want to be part of a movement of evolution of consciousness and practice yoga that nurtures it.
Well, I'll just wrap with this, is that you have gurus and you have satgurus,
Yeah.
right? The guru may be a teacher. The satguru is the embodied enlightened master who has attained the state of yoga. And through their darshan, through the gosa, they transmit it just by being in their presence. And I feel like it's a disservice to the world of yoga to not acknowledge that as a reality, to not acknowledge that as a present. There's a whole you are your own guru movement, and everybody kind of cycling in this practice. I feel like what's integral is to lead people towards those beings, to lead people up to find themselves in the presence of what it truly means to be in the presence of yoga, truly. And I feel like that could be one of the greatest services, yet there's not a lot of them on this planet. There really isn't. And that's part of the difficulty of being in this world of yoga, is that there's so many false gurus. There's so many false prophets. There's so many people in the world that we want to look at as an embodiment of that state, yet there's so few that are full embodiments of that state.
I love the line of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. He said that wisdom is the guru and conscious introspection is the disciple. And so how do we lead people to the foot of the mountain of wisdom and to become a disciple of that wisdom through conscious introspection? And the yoga practice that leads them towards that wisdom, whether it's a wisdom that comes from an ancient master of the past, or it comes from the river, or it comes from a child, but to be able to be humble to the presence of wisdom in life, and then to be able to be self-reflective enough, contemplative enough, receptive enough to be able to introspect as to how that wisdom is instructing us to become more self-aware, more in tune with life, then you have a yoga.
Yes, exactly. And that's the standard that I believe you hold, is the container of a yoga teacher training. The intention and the purpose that's set out is that you're not coming to just learn tools to teach to others. You're coming to embody a state of consciousness that you can transmit it to others. It's a big difference. Can you hold the stillness within yourself? Are you committed to living a life where you're embodying a state of stillness and no mind? Are you committed to the path of becoming yoga so that you can hold the space for yoga? That's a very, very different inquiry than come learn some asanas and show others how to do calisthenics.
Yes, it is. And you know, it's a big ask, and we don't need to. What I would like is for people listening to this, if they're yoga teachers or yoga practitioners, to take joy at the length of the journey rather than to feel daunted by it. Think of it as if we come onto it with sincerity and wholeheartedness, that it's like a really wonderful book or show that you don't want to end. You know, Even though in some
Speaking of that,
senses you do.
we should probably end the show.
Yeah, exactly.
To keep it a short episode, but there'll be many more to come, as this topic is one that me and my brother have spent our lives and continue to spend our lives delving into. We definitely want to dive deeper into Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Gyan Yoga, all Karma Yoga, Patanjali, the Gita, the different unfoldments of yoga, so that we can really bring this lineage in our unique way through to you, the viewers, because I also believe that the emergence of yoga is a critical aspect of this next renaissance.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Thanks for listening, family. The fastest way to accelerate the next renaissance is to share ideas that matter. If you found this to be valuable, please consider taking 15 seconds, pressing the follow button, and sharing this with somebody that you feel will benefit from it. If you think someone needs to be on this podcast with us, send us a DM and let us know. Until next cast.